Hey everyone, today we're talking about something most men never get taught, not by their fathers, not by their friends, and definitely not by pop culture. You're sitting on the edge of a hotel bed. The lamp glows low, the room hums with silence. She's just a few feet away brushing her hair, and in that moment, something strange happens. She's watching you. Not your body, not your words, but your stillness. She's asking silently, "Can I trust this man with all of me?" And if you think you can control how others feel about you, then maybe that's exactly what you haven't let go of yet. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is over there. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on a fan for some soft background noise. And let's begin today's journey together. You've been lied to, not by accident, but by repetition. Magazines, YouTube videos, locker room conversations all whisper the same tired script. If you want her respect, impress her, be the alpha, dominate, show strength, take control. But here's what those voices never say: the men women actually respect aren't trying to impress anyone. Because real respect doesn't bloom from loud gestures, it unfolds in stillness. You could take her to a five-star dinner, drive the slickest car, talk your way through the night like you read every chapter of The Art of Seduction. But if you flinch when she shows vulnerability, if you panic when she goes quiet, if your confidence melts the moment she questions you, she won't remember the dinner. She'll remember the discomfort in her gut. See, women are intuitive creatures, not in a magical aura kind of way, but in the way that 1,000 years of survival instinct has wired them to scan for safety without even knowing they're doing it. When you walk into the room with tension, ego, or agenda, she feels it before you open your mouth. You might be charming, you might be smart, you might be good in bed, but if your energy says, "I'm here to prove something," she's already stepped 2 feet away from you emotionally, if not physically. That's why some men, the ones who barely speak, barely show off, barely seem to try, somehow make the deepest impression. It's not because they're passive, it's because they're centered. Because while most men are trying to win a woman, these men are just trying to be with her. Let me give you a modern metaphor. Think of her like a high end audio system. If your energy is static, needy, loud, anxious, every song you try to play through her sounds distorted. But if your energy is calm and clean, even silence becomes a melody. That's what presence is. The quiet confidence that says, "I don't need to be anything but here." It's the way you sit back without slouching, the way your gaze doesn't dart to your phone every 3 seconds, the way your laughter doesn't feel like a performance, but like an honest reaction, even if it's at something dumb, like that time you thought bidets were drinking fountains. Philosophers still debate the nature of charisma, but here's something simple. Women remember how you make them feel about themselves, not just during the highs, but during the pauses, the unspoken, the moments where your presence says more than your punchlines. And here's where the myth collapses. The men who are the most respected aren't the ones who do the most. They're the ones who make women feel the most by doing the least with intention. And you can be intense without being aggressive. You can lead without being controlling. You can touch without being invasive. And when you do that, when your masculinity doesn't scream but settles, she starts to see you not as another man, but as a man worth following. So next time you're with her, or even just sitting next to her, remember this. She's not evaluating your resume. She's scanning your presence. And if your energy says, "I'm trying to impress you," you've already lost her respect. But if your energy says, "I'm grounded here with or without your validation," now she's curious. Now you're different. Now you're unforgettable. There's a difference between being physically there and being emotionally present, and she knows it. She can feel it the moment your eyes glaze over during a conversation. She can feel it when your touch is mechanical, when your laugh is rehearsed, when your words sound like they're trying to unlock some mental checklist you got from Reddit. She doesn't want a robot with good timing. She wants a man who feels her, not just sees her face, but watches the way her lips twitch when she's nervous. Not just hears her voice, but notices the pause before she says, "I'm fine." You want to be the kind of man who doesn't just nod, but responds. Not with solutions, not with interruptions, just stillness. A pause, a breath, the ability to sit in discomfort without scrambling to fix it. Because when you stay present, when you stay, she feels it in her nervous system. And that's where the real intimacy begins. Let's be honest, most men are terrible listeners, not because they're bad people, but because they're listening with an agenda, trying to figure out how to respond, how to impress, how to pivot. But women don't want your answer, they want your attention. Real attention is rare. In a world full of men half watching Netflix and half scrolling Instagram, while pretending to care, a man who leans in and stays with her, even when she's all over the place, feels like a miracle. It's like this emotional presence is the opposite of emotional performance. Performance says, look how great I am at understanding you. Presence says, you don't need to prove anything. I'm not going anywhere. You ever notice how a dog can sense your stress before you say a word? Yeah, women are like that. Except instead of sniffing your socks, they sniff out your energy. They notice if your breathing speeds up when the topic gets emotional. They notice if your tone shifts when they bring up something uncomfortable. They notice everything. And if your emotional presence collapses even a little, they feel it as rejection. Academic researchers call this attunement. It's not some mystical term. It just means you're tuned into the present moment with her, not thinking about the next move, not fantasizing about the end result, just here. And here's the kicker: when you show up with that kind of presence, you unlock something most men never get to see: her softness, her depth, her truth. Not the Instagram version of her, the real her. And she doesn't give that lightly. It's the way she leans into you on the couch, the way her voice drops when she tells you about her childhood, the way she unconsciously reaches for your hand when her anxiety kicks up. Not because you solved her, but because you stayed. Because you didn't get scared and disappear into distraction. Because your energy told her, I can handle you, all of you. Let me tell you a secret. Emotional presence is sexy. Not in a cheesy rom-com way, in a primal, sacred way. It's the difference between someone who touches your body and someone who enters your soul. She'll moan louder, cry softer, laugh freer, because she knows she's not being watched, she's being held. And yeah, you'll make mistakes. You'll zone out. You'll miss the signal. You'll think she's mad when she's actually scared. But presence doesn't mean perfection. It just means you're with her, not against her. So next time you feel the urge to impress her with words, don't. Impress her with your silence, with your breath, with your patience, because in a world full of men shouting for attention, the one who listens really listens becomes the man she never forgets. Let's clear something up. Seduction without safety is just manipulation. She might play along, she might smile, she might even say yes, but her body will always remember if it didn't feel safe. And here's the twist that most men miss: safety doesn't mean boring, it means liberating. See, when a woman feels safe, she becomes alive. Not polite, not agreeable, alive. Her movements become fluid, her voice deeper, her touch slower, more certain. She steps into her full feminine expression, not because you unlocked her, but because you stopped trying to control her. Emotional safety isn't about walking on eggshells or acting like some sanitized nice guy. It's about creating space where she can show everything: her passion, her fear, her chaos, without fearing that you'll flinch or flee. She might test you, she might push, she might even say something that seems designed to provoke you. But she's not looking for a reaction, she's looking for a container. Think about it. Water is wild, it needs a glass. Fire is dangerous, it needs a hearth. The feminine is expansive, emotional, untamed, it needs something steady to lean into. Not something to control it, but something to hold it. This is where most men fold. She gets loud, he gets louder. She gets emotional, he gets defensive. She withdraws, he chases, or worse, punishes. But the men women respect, they don't fold, they don't chase, they stay still like the eye of a storm. That kind of man doesn't flinch when she cries. He doesn't mock when she's anxious. He doesn't recoil when she shares something dark. He just listens, nods, stays. And you know what? That tells her, I'm safe here. Not safe from the world, safe with you. Which in this world is more intoxicating than any candlelit date or sexy text message you could ever send. Philosophers still debate whether true intimacy is even possible between people. But here's a reality that cuts through theory. Real intimacy starts the moment she realizes she can be her messy, imperfect emotional self, and you don't run. Safety shows up in the smallest places: the way you don't interrupt her mid-story, the way you don't rush to fix her emotions like they're problems, the way you say, take your time and mean it. And yeah, the bedroom matters too. Because if she doesn't feel safe emotionally, she'll never fully surrender physically. You could have the best hands in the world, but if your energy is off, her body will resist even when her words don't. You ever try to pet a scared dog too fast? Same thing. She tenses, she freezes. She goes through the motions, but she's not there. But when you give her safety, she opens, she breathes, she blooms. And it has nothing to do with your technique, it's all about your energy. There's a quirky study I read once about infants recognizing calm versus anxious caregivers based on heart rate alone. That's the level we're talking about. Pre-verbal, nervous system, gut deep knowing. So ask yourself, what's the vibe you bring into the room? Does your presence say, I'm here to get something? Or does it say, I'm here to hold something? Because that difference, subtle, quiet, almost invisible, that's what makes her drop her guard. That's what earns you her trust. That's what turns a woman's affection into devotion. It's not about seducing her, it's about creating a space so safe, she seduces herself. And when that happens, you're not just a lover. You're the sanctuary she never knew she needed. You ever walk into a room and feel someone's energy before they say a word? That's not charisma, that's presence. And presence starts with quiet confidence. The kind that doesn't need to prove anything. The kind that doesn't get shaken when someone else raises their voice. The kind that doesn't need to be loud and because it already knows who it is. That's what women respect. Not the man who brags, not the one who posts gym selfies like clockwork, not the guy who interrupts every conversation just to sound smart. They respect the one who doesn't flinch when things get emotional. The one who listens longer than he talks. The one who pauses before he reacts. You don't need a perfect jawline or a six-figure bank account to have this kind of power. You need centeredness, an inner stillness that says, I'm good with or without your approval. And that energy, it's magnetic. Let me tell you something unexpected. Most women don't want you to fix them. They want to know you won't fall apart when they show you their storms. You want to stand out, be the calm when she's in chaos. Like when she's spiraling over something that sounds small to you. It's tempting to say you're overreacting. But what if you didn't? What if you just stayed present, nodded, and said, I get why? That would feel heavy. No lecture, no eye roll, just quiet understanding. That's confidence. Quirky example. There's this guy in my apartment building. Bald mid-50s, walks his dog every night at the exact same time. He never says much, just a small smile and nod. But everyone respects him. Even the loud shirtless dudes by the pool lower their volume when he passes. Why? Because he's still. Because he walks like he knows himself and doesn't need to announce it. That's the kind of quiet power women notice. It's in the way you breathe, the way you slow your speech when others speed up, the way you hold eye contact not to intimidate but to say, I'm not hiding. Academic circles might call this non-reactive masculinity. Basically, you don't get hijacked by the moment. You respond instead of reacting, and that makes you rare. Because most men, they get thrown off by one bad mood, one sarcastic comment, one shift in energy, and boom, they crumble or lash out. But you stay grounded, like a mountain that doesn't move just because the wind picked up. And that's what makes her trust you. That's what makes her open. That's what makes her respect you. Because here's the thing, the more calm you are with her emotions, the more confident she becomes in your masculinity. Not the fake, I never cry kind of masculinity. The real, embodied, earned kind. The kind that makes her feel safe to unravel, to laugh without filtering, to cry without shame, to love without holding back. You become the anchor. The one who doesn't get pulled into drama, the one who can hold tension without turning it into conflict. And when you do that, when your confidence shows up in your restraint, not in your volume, you become unforgettable. So next time you're tempted to raise your voice to defend yourself too quickly to show off because you're feeling insecure, pause, breathe, and let your presence do the talking. Because in a world where most men scream for attention, the one who stays quiet and grounded becomes the one she listens to most. There's a moment right before you touch her where everything is decided. Not in your hands, in your energy. And she can feel it. Is this man here to take or to honor? See, most men rush to undress her, rush to impress her, rush to get to some imaginary finish line that ends with validation. But reverence slows everything down. It turns every move into a ritual, every glance into a question, every breath into permission. You don't touch her like you're checking off a to-do list. You touch her like she's a scripture, something you read slowly, carefully, not because you don't know what you're doing, but because you respect what you're doing. Think of it like this. There's a difference between a man who unwraps a gift to see what's inside and a man who already knows what's inside is sacred. That's the difference between a boy who wants her body and a man who honors her essence. And yes, she knows the difference because her body keeps score. She remembers how you first looked at her when the clothes came off. She remembers if your hands were guided by presence or by pressure. Reverence is the quiet language of depth. It's the moment you kiss her, not because you're turned on, but because you feel grateful. Grateful to be this close, grateful to be trusted, grateful to witness the way her breath changes when your lips find that exact place on her shoulder. There's a quirky scene in a movie like Water for Chocolate. A man cooks a meal with such emotional intensity that everyone who eats it bursts into tears or laughter or desire. That's what happens when your intention becomes part of the experience. Your energy soaks into every action. That's what she feels when you move with reverence, when you look at her like she's art. Not a canvas for your ego, but a masterpiece you're lucky to witness. Philosophers still debate the line between sacred and sensual, but here's the secret: there isn't a line. The most spiritual thing you can do is make someone feel deeply seen in their most vulnerable moment. And there's nothing more vulnerable than giving someone your body hoping they'll treat it like home instead of a hotel. When you rush, you break trust, even if she doesn't say it, even if she moans or kisses back. Her nervous system remembers, and she won't crave you for what you did. She'll remember how you made her feel, like she was worth taking your time for, like you weren't just present with her body, but with her soul. So slow down, not as a tactic, not because some dating coach told you to, but because you're finally mature enough to value the experience more than the result. You don't get extra points for how fast she comes. You don't win a medal for how many positions you tried. What matters is this: did she feel held? Did she feel safe? Did she feel seen? When she answers yes to all three, that's when she respects you. That's when she desires you. That's when she remembers you. Because at the end of the day, it's not how many women you've had, it's how many you've honored. And the man who moves with reverence, he doesn't just sleep with women, he awakens them. Her body keeps score, not in numbers, in feelings, in the way your fingertips moved across her skin, in whether your hands asked or assumed, in how your silence felt calming or confusing. And here's the thing that shocks most men: she doesn't remember the technique, she remembers the tone, how you touched her, what your eyes said when her clothes came off, if your presence wrapped around her like safety or if it hovered like expectation. Because every woman has known that one moment where she said yes, but her body said no, where she smiled, but her gut whispered, hurry up and finish. That's not intimacy. That's tolerance. And you don't want to be tolerated. You want to be felt. You want to be remembered. And for that, respect is the key. Respect is what makes her legs tremble, not from fear, but from trust. Respect is what turns a casual night into a memory her body returns to years later. Respect is what separates the man she forgets from the one she fantasizes about long after he's gone. You want a cheat code. Here it is. The more emotionally safe she feels, the more uninhibited she becomes. It's not about dirty talk or edgy moves. It's about emotional permission. Does your presence give her freedom, or does it make her feel like she has to shrink? Real respect says, I'm not here to take from you, I'm here to meet you. Not to perform, not to impress, just to connect. Because the connection is the climax. Everything else is just choreography. Ever notice how certain scents bring you back to childhood? Or how hearing an old song makes you feel what you felt at 16? That's how the feminine body stores memory. It's not linear, it's emotional. So if you want to live in her mind, don't focus on what you do. Focus on how you made her feel. Even the most subtle gesture, a hand brushing her hip when she's doing the dishes, a deep inhale before kissing her neck, a whispered, "You're safe with me," can embed itself in her like poetry. Academic types might call it somatic imprinting, but to her it's just called craving. Craving the man who didn't rush. Craving the one who paused when she stiffened. Craving the one who adjusted his rhythm, not because she said something, but because he noticed. That's what you're aiming for, not applause, not dominance, but that quiet moment when she closes her eyes and exhales like she's home. Respect means knowing that just because she said yes doesn't mean she's ready. It means reading the room and reading her breath. It means understanding that sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to slow down, to kiss her collarbone like it's a story, to let silence stretch without trying to fill it, to touch her in a way that says, I'm not here for my pleasure. I'm here for ours. You don't need to be a mind reader. You just need to care. Enough to ask, enough to notice, enough to stay with her through every phase of opening from hesitation to hunger to holy. Because when a woman feels that kind of presence, her body doesn't just respond, it remembers. And that memory, that's what turns your name into a soft echo in her chest, long after the sheets are cold. Now let's talk about the kind of man who doesn't flinch when life or love gets messy. The man who doesn't chase, doesn't panic, doesn't need the room to validate him because his worth isn't hanging by a thread. He's not stone faced. He's not emotionless. He's not a cliche of some old school man's man. He feels everything, but he's not ruled by it. That's the core of stoic masculinity. And no, we're not talking about the pop psych version where you bottle everything up and call it strength. We're talking about a calm, rooted presence that radiates security. She sees it in how you respond when she's spinning, when she's crying, when she's overthinking or emotional or spiraling through 100 thoughts at once. You don't meet her chaos with more chaos. You don't try to fix her in 30 seconds or tell her she's being dramatic. You just hold your ground, hold her story, hold the moment. That's when she starts to feel safe. Not because you solved her, but because you didn't abandon her. Think about this, every woman at some level is watching you. Not in a paranoid way, in a protective way. She's tracking your tone, your patience, your reactions when she's not being easy or sexy or perfect. That's when she decides, is this man just here for the highs, or is he steady enough to hold the lows too? Philosophers still debate whether strength is innate or earned, but this kind of strength, it's chosen. It's the man who breathes before he speaks, the man who doesn't let ego drag him into arguments, the man who, even when angry, keeps his words clean and his hands softer than his frustration. Quirky image for you. Imagine a lighthouse in the middle of a violent storm, waves crashing, wind screaming, and that light just keeps turning. That's what stoic masculine energy feels like to a woman's nervous system. Reliable, constant, not loud, but unshakable. You don't get that kind of energy by faking it. You get it by doing the work, by knowing your triggers, by managing your reactions, by practicing stillness when every part of you wants to prove something. And yeah, it shows up in bed too. Because the man who can hold emotional storms without running can also hold a woman's deepest moans without needing to perform. He knows that her pleasure isn't a performance review, it's an invitation. You want her to trust you. Don't just show strength when things are easy. Show it when she's messy, when she's scared, when she says something that catches you off guard. And here's the beautiful twist: when she sees you remain still in her storm, that's when she starts to soften in a way you've never seen before. She becomes playful, she becomes wild, she becomes soft, yes, but not weak, open, honest, devoted. Because now she knows you're not another boy pretending to be strong. You're a man she can lean on, and that kind of man. That's the one she respects, the one she remembers, the one she chooses not because she has to, but because everything in her says yes. A woman can't melt into you unless she feels safe around you. Not just physically, that's the minimum, but emotionally, spiritually, nervously. She has to relax to respond. And most men never give her the chance. You see, surrender is not something you take from her. It's something you earn, not with words, not with moves, but with presence. She is constantly scanning you, even when she's smiling. Not because she's suspicious, but because her body has been taught to protect itself. From men who rushed, from men who used her openness as leverage, from men who said, trust me, but didn't stay long enough to deserve it. And that's why she doesn't just open up. She blooms when your energy proves again and again, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not afraid of your depth. I can handle all of you, not just the pretty parts. When you show up like that, you create something rare. A space where she can exhale, where she doesn't have to perform, where she doesn't have to guess what version of herself is acceptable today. And that kind of space, that's where feminine energy thrives. Not in chaos, not in performance, in peace, in safety, in stillness. Here's what no one teaches you: the safer she feels, the more wild she becomes. Not fake wild, not performative wild, real, raw, unfiltered. Because now her sensuality isn't guarded, her laughter isn't hesitant, her moans aren't held back by fear, they're pure reactions to presence. You become the man who lets her feel her own femininity fully. Because your masculinity isn't trying to match her mood or overpower her energy, it's containing it. Quirky example. Think of those weighted blankets people use for anxiety. They don't fight the body. They don't restrict movement. They just hold, gently, firmly, quietly. That's what you are when you're grounded, her emotional weighted blanket. You're not there to fix her. You're there to anchor her. Academic psychologists might call this co-regulation, the ability for one nervous system to calm another. She cries, you breathe. She doubts, you affirm. She trembles, you stay. You don't have to say much. In fact, the less you say, the more she feels. Because your energy says what your words can't: I see you. I'm here. You're safe. And over time, she starts to believe it. Not just intellectually, but in her body. That's when she surrenders. Not because you seduced her, but because you never made her feel like she had to protect herself. And in that surrender, she doesn't just fall into bed, she falls into trust, into loyalty, into the deepest form of respect, the kind that doesn't come from status or looks, but from the way she feels when she's near you. So if you're wondering why she doesn't open up, why she hesitates, why her body tenses at your touch, ask yourself, does she feel safe with me or studied by me? Seen or scanned, held or handled? Because the man who makes her feel safe, that's the man she chooses, again and again and again. Let's get brutally honest, most men are forgettable. Not because they're bad people, but because they never slow down long enough to leave a mark. They rush, they reach, they react. And to a woman's nervous system that all feels the same, untrustworthy. But the man who becomes a memory, the one she thinks about at red lights or in the shower or in the quiet moments before sleep, he moves differently. He listens deeper. He carries something rare in tension. He's not trying to perform. He's not mimicking something he saw online. He's simply present, fully, undistracted, undemanding. He doesn't just kiss her. He pauses before the kiss. He doesn't just touch her. He observes how her body responds before moving further. He doesn't just undress her. He undresses himself too emotionally. And this is what most men miss. She remembers who you were when things got quiet, when there was no music, no tension, just you. Were you patient? Were you calm? Did your silence feel like safety or pressure? Every woman has that one man she'll never forget. And it's rarely the hottest, rarely the richest. It's the one who made her feel like her truth was not just tolerated, but celebrated. There's a quirky phrase from an old poem that goes, "She remembered not the way he touched her, but the way his touch felt like home." That's what you're aiming for, not performance, presence. Philosophers still argue about the nature of soulmates, but there's no debate about this. When a woman feels emotionally safe with you, her body remembers everything. It's in the way she arches her back without thinking, the way her voice softens when she's near you, the way her breath aligns with yours when your presence is steady enough to sync her system. This kind of intimacy isn't achieved, it's allowed. Allowed by your restraint, by your ability to hold space, by your refusal to make her feel like a performance review. You don't need to be her fantasy, you just need to be real, because real is rare. Real stays, real breathes, real responds when most men recoil. And that's what leaves a mark. Not what you do in bed, but who you are while you're doing it. Do you feel her? Do you see her? Do you let your heart be as naked as her skin? That's the real connection. That's what becomes unforgettable. Because you're no longer just a body she laid next to. You're a moment she can't replicate. So here's the truth. She doesn't need you to be perfect. She needs you to be present. And the man who gives her that, he becomes the man her body, mind, and soul will crave even in silence, even after time passes, even if life moves on. Because you weren't a highlight, you were a home. Here's what no one tells you: true masculine power is not loud. It doesn't kick the door down. It doesn't announce itself with arrogance. It enters quietly and fills the room without speaking. It's in how you breathe when things get tense. It's in the way your shoulders stay relaxed even when hers are clenched. It's in your refusal to escalate even when she pushes you not to punish you, but to test your roots. Because that's what she's really looking for. Not dominance, not control, but depth. The kind that doesn't crack under pressure, the kind that makes her chaos feel held, not judged. You want to know what's sexier than a perfect body? A man who can sit in her storm and not flinch. A man whose silence is not a punishment, but a container. This isn't about being cold. It's about being anchored. Your stillness isn't indifference. It's the message: I'm not afraid of your fire. I won't be burned by it. That's the power she respects. Not the guy who buys her attention. Not the one who overcompensates with gifts or bravado. But the man who doesn't need to be seen because he already sees himself. Quirky example. Think of a campfire. You don't shout at it to stay lit. You build it. You tend to it. And then you trust it to burn. That's what your energy should feel like. Warm, steady, inviting, but self-sustaining. Philosophers still explore the paradox of masculine identity, how strength can exist without force, how leadership doesn't require command. And here's the answer: embodiment. It's in the small moments. When you ask, what do you need right now, and actually mean it. When you pause before making a decision because you care about the outcome. When you stand still, not because you're frozen, but because you choose to stay grounded. And when she sees that, when she feels that, her body relaxes, her voice softens, her trust deepens. Because now she's not performing femininity, she's returning to it. Not because you forced her, but because you invited her back to herself. This is what most men never understand. Her surrender is not your trophy, it's a gift. And your job is to be worthy of it every time. When she moans, it's not just desire, it's release. When she trembles, it's not weakness, it's truth leaving her body. When she collapses into you, it's not because she's tired, it's because she's safe. And that only happens when your masculinity is grounded enough to hold the moment, to not rush it, to not explain it, to just be in it. You don't need to be rich. You don't need to be ripped. You don't need to be the loudest man in the room. You just need to be still. Still enough for her to hear herself in your presence. Still enough to become her sanctuary in a world full of noise. Because the man who doesn't need to prove anything, that's the man who becomes everything. Not because he took her, but because he made her feel seen, heard, held, and utterly undeniably safe. That is real power. That is unforgettable. Word count 88. Closing section. So now we slow down. Now we breathe. Now we leave the noise behind. Because everything you just heard, it's not just about her. It's about you. The man you become when no one's watching. The strength you carry in your quiet. The safety you offer through your stillness. You don't need to become someone else. You need to become more of yourself, grounded, awake, steady. She doesn't need perfect. She needs presence. And presence is something you choose again and again in how you speak, in how you touch, in how you stay when it would be easier to leave. So let her remember you for your depth, not your performance. Let her feel you long after the room goes quiet. And when she lies awake at night, if she thinks of you, may it be with softness in her breath and safety in her bones. Because you didn't just touch her body, you touched the part of her that only opens when she feels safe. And for that, she will remember you. End of script. Have a beautiful day.